No, Uncle Tommy, I don't want tummy inspections. Oh, it's just a dream. Oh, I got a new comment. From a washed up YouTuber to you, Dark Savior didn't pull more viewers for you. It was a response of YouTube suggesting your video. I found you a couple weeks ago from your Chronicles of the Sword video. It did 2.5k numbers, but YouTube seen it and suggested it for me from watching Mandular. What I'm saying is what you're doing is working and isn't a result of one video, so don't spend time trying to think, what did I do right with this single video? So what you're saying is, it wasn't the ass cheeks on my thumbnail. And you. Nah, we gotta have just one. There we go.
A mysterious darkness conquered the island of Marinette. There was either a god or a demon who controlled the island, and no one tried to go there. Never approach the island, for a sleeping beast in the darkness waits for a great awakening.
Kingsfield, the sequel to Kingsfield, needs no introduction. A little over a decade ago, I had a coworker that occasionally would want to hang out, smoke weed, and play random games to show off how his game was better than my game. This gentleman was very adamant about how Devil May Cry 4 was vastly superior to the DMC reboot that was one of my favorite games at the time. Obviously, he has his opinion on the matter, and since I'm the one editing this video, my opinion is correct and he can eat shit.
Get your filthy claw off my trailer. Missed.
He also really wanted me to see this niche title by the name Demon Souls. I remember seeing a review on it in a publication somewhere with its mixed thoughts on the difficulty spikes, but also having a rewarding loop in its grind. I never owned a PS3 for the majority of its lifespan, as the insufferable ad campaign that came with its price tag gave me a case of serious fanboyism. I studied the gameplay while this guy with his glazed over eyes focuses on dispatching enemy after enemy in a methodical and very careful manner. Set in a medieval setting, all with this slick presentation that you can't just put into words. At least I can't, because I can't write for shit. Anywho, the game left an instant impression on me, not necessarily due to the precise gameplay and rolling barrels, but also the burst of nostalgia for a long-lost title that was itching in the back of my mind. What was this game reminding me of? And then it hit me. Not the realization that this game is the successor to Kingsfield, but the weed. I was hungry as fuck. Also in memory lane was getting this on rental way back in the day, being an early entry into the PSX's library. The sheer excitement of launching into a 3D world was not something we were accustomed to, especially not ever having a PC to play on at this point. These graphics may look silly by today's standards, but the impression it left can't really be replicated. Certain games have that impact. The amount of luscious effects on screen took control of anything else. A true leap in technology that has that effect on us, and especially me. It's a type of game that has you saying to yourself, this is the next generation, right here. It generally took a while for each new console to be able to have the title that really shows off what that platform is capable of, sans the occasional first-party big-name launch title that were held in secret. The outside developers had to put in some serious crunch to really flex each generation's power. Battletoads on the NES, Final Fantasy 3/6 on the Super NES, Crash Bandicoot on the PlayStation. Some examples of the coming years would be Ninja Gaiden on the Xbox, Gears of War on the Xbox 360. I could draw a dozen more examples out of my ass that would coalesce with you, but I think you get the idea. We always preach to ourselves that graphics don't make the game, but the truth is, in my opinion, that they make up a huge component of it, which is why getting someone who's accustomed to modern gaming to pick up Kingsfield on the PS1 and expect the same level of immersion that this game brought is almost ridiculous in concept. It's not impossible, but man, you really need an active imagination to look at this and say, wow, that thing is scary. Because back then, it really was, I promise. The story of Kingsfield is a long-faded mesh of badly translated lore mixed with the ancient form of RPG storytelling that focus much more on the what than the why. You're a knight sent to get a sword. There's elves. There's a dragon. The rest is filled with names and places, sometimes that are relevant and sometimes that they are not. By which I mean almost always not. What really matters is this initial experience is filled with an exploratory atmosphere that few games can capture, even today, and a large amount of credit is based off the interconnectedness of the map. I'm going to build on this word until it's a real thing, I swear. The disc is burning up under that lid from when you fire it up until you turn it off, as this game engine is nearly seamless in its hiding of loading. It's extremely impressive from a technical standpoint, but also in its vision, as the zones themselves tell a story all of its own. If you squint hard enough, you can see the world that they wanted you to see. Oppressive, macabre, unrelenting, but also having spots of breathing room, with open-ended areas that showcased impressive depth and incredible ambition. We have some graphical stuff to go over yet, but overall, the package here is remarkable. Let's dive in. Kingsfield starts you off on the island of Marinette, where you take in the scenery, the slow and unresponsive controls, and the awe of seeing your own arm swing a sword before moving a few feet to your death. After a brief black screen, you're set upon the same spot and now learn of what the dark areas underneath the water represent. You'll then plod into a general direction, find an enemy, and die to that as well, most likely. Start in that initial area again, and slowly reapproach that area with a tad more caution. Drawing a comparison to Dark Souls, likely my favorite game of all time. In both games, the beautifully designed initial area does its best to allow true agency with its player. You can go wherever you want at this point, but it's up to you to learn when you clearly aren't meant to be there and when to turn back. Both games lure you into an area that looks promising, but is met with skeletons that will decimate you on low levels. Both games have valuable items that a knowledgeable player can get very early on to get themselves an advantage for the rest of the game. And best of all, both maps are interconnected in a beautiful, confounding mess. But we're here to talk story, aren't we? I'm getting off track. I just can't get over how impactful this opening is. The mission on hand is ambiguous. The intro only tells you that you really shouldn't be here. But for the purpose of storytelling, let's just say we need to get to the bottom of the island. To get further down, we will eventually go through the opening on the island that you start by. But first, we need to pick up our first magic spell found at the peak of this tower. Magic is found by an item pickup and then is used to learn it. It's either equipped as a slot for an offensive spell, or accessed in the menu for a defensive and healing. MP is a very valuable commodity in this game, so it's highly recommended you save this for as long as possible. For now, the tried and true strategy of Kingsfield and its successors applies here. Strafe around a lot. The bar underneath your HP meter represents the percentage of damage a full swing produced on the target. You'll usually want to time it with full swings, but in a pinch, a half or quarter swing will produce a much needed stun to the enemy, so you can continue to whap them. Magic is different, as the green bar needs to be completely full before you are allowed to cast anything. This is a clever means to ensure you can't abuse moving around with the sprint button to spam magic. As you slowly make your way through the dungeon, or quickly and dying to consequences of not moving slowly, you will find your trusty save beacon, your only means of keeping yourself from being sent back to the front of the island, as if it were all a dream. There will be a technical means of preventing permadeath way later in the game, but given how much bullshit you need to overcome to do so, it is all but of a complete waste of effort. Save often, and save state often. Did I say that out loud? Well, to be honest, if you're going in for the full experience, I suggest you turn off save states for this game. balls to the wall, raw dog, get in there, buddy. Nothing can really replace the feeling of rounding a corner, seeing a massive area surrounded with new enemies, and saying to yourself, I think I'll go back and save first. And that's where this game shines more than anything, its sense of exploration. From the very first of many bases, the game opens up in an admittedly samey-looking series of areas that winds up, down, sideways, and through fake walls that can only be described as once-in-a-lifetime dungeon experience. It oozes an oppressive vibe, all with its sweet slap bass, causing a sense of claustrophobia over time. This will be met with a sense of relief when you ascend to one of the many towns, where you sometimes get to see a skyline, sometimes not. Who the hell knows what the hell is going on here? You'll meet up with some very interesting NPCs and their questionable tangents. Like both games, the dialogue and setting expects the player to be confused for the most part, and knowledge of the NPCs isn't particularly necessary to succeed. There are a few key NPCs, such as this woman wanting her dumbass son to be saved, and while not truly an NPC that is required to beat the game, has some excellent items on hand, including a map of the endgame section that a certain Mandular may not have had on his playthrough, but I'm getting way ahead of myself. The central village is what I consider the central hub of the game. From here, there are many directions the player can go, backwards towards base 1, through the big mines, through to base 3, and so on. It is also relatively close to another absolutely critical area for an easier playthrough, Seath's Fountain. While I fucked up big time on this playthrough, forgetting to use the stone on the correct fountain, the use of the stone acquired through questing unlocks another flow of water for you to fill crystal flasks with. Think of them as Estus flasks, but where you need to fill them here and in other bodies of fresh water. The water I initially unlock is to clear of any status ailments, which is fine, except at this point, I'm unable to draw too many charges, so I think I'll prefer the one that keeps me alive. Oh well, on to the next area. As what could be the first major plot progression, this woman is literally standing in the way to the next area. Her dumbass son is located in the termite's nest, an area that is accessed in a very unorthodox manner. I like how, despite you fall down this trapdoor, the sign warning you of its impending danger is past the trapdoor. Once inside the termite's nest, you awkwardly make your way around to finally find the likely first boss of Kingsfield, this giant termite. You're supposed to kill this with ranged attacks, but I miss where this bow was kept for pickup, and instead bashed the fuck out of it. Finally, we rescued the the boy. Yep, he's a dumbass. Once this area is unlocked, you're now able to essentially explore any area that doesn't destroy you within seconds of entering it, like say, this. There are a ton of what I could say are side quests here. None of them are truly necessary to reach the end of the game, but the majority of them are still wanted to gain the various powers to make the experience so much easier. Gaining crystals will eventually allow you to trade them for crystal flasks from this vendor, which makes exploring the depths of these areas so much easier. Along with this, an extremely handy couple of items to be aware of are the Star Key and Star Gate. Put the key into one of the save areas, and for the low cost of 10 MP, can instantly warp back to safety. Once I had this set up, moving about and collecting all of the things makes life so much easier. And like the other game, the difficulty of the game slowly becomes more obvious to you than from the start. What was once an insurmountable challenge now is more accessible to my meaty paws. Knowing the more obvious traps in advance is one thing, but the true difficulty lies in its obscurity in its opening areas. Nothing is explained until they are used or equipped, unless you can find this woman holding a crystal ball, who cannot tell you the future, but can elaborate on what the hell these things are. It's another strange mechanic that I find endearing. What I don't find endearing, however, is the need to look at all of my stats, memorize them instantly, and swap an equipped item to see what has changed. I know it's an older time, but there was no need to obscure this. It's just shitty design. What is not shitty design is the map itself. Like the other game, learning the tells of the environment is critical to not only memorizing where you are, but is also instrumental in discovery. A great example is very early on, you will find an area with a strange hole in an inaccessible area. It's a subtle tell of a nearby, very dangerous zone that you can access from 30 seconds into the game, but only if you dare to make this leap, taking a lot of fall damage. Once through this labyrinthian shithole, you'll find a nice melee weapon, some crystals, and a myriad of deaths from pop-up skeletons. All of it circling back to this very spot. It's a satisfaction that very few games can provide, because despite its nonsensical design, it still feels so much more natural than the hundreds of games that came after this one, where you end up at the front of the dungeon just past the entrance. Like, why couldn't we just go through this one door to the final boss arena? There's quite a bit of lore spelt out in the scenery as well. The clever use of assets in this later area show a caged-in experimental monster was used to nom its unfortunate victims, as an example. Once you acquire the Truth Mirror, you can use this on enemies, friendlies, and the environment itself to start to spell out the lore as much as you want, something that I infinitely appreciate about this game along with the other one. You can nearly plow through the entire game without much of any relevant info if you so choose, with barely any forced dialogue or cutscenes to cut into the immersion. But if you really want to know who this guy is, the Truth Mirror will shed a poorly translated light upon them. That's what you get for hurting your lord's feeling, Al Hunt. At least you still have your brother, Michael. As I plundered deeper into the recesses of Marinette, shit hit the fan as I'm immediately one-shotted by these fire-wielding opponents. In this area in particular, you have one of the early examples how the prevalent term immersive sim comes about. There are, in fact, many ways around this obstacle that require some rather obscure game knowledge, including trading 3 incredibly valuable flasks for this flute, which absolutely no one explains what it does. You just have to know to blow it around these pillars to access bridges, and also that these bridges only last a few seconds. You can also locate the magic ice cave and tank this boss for a good 10 minutes, gaining several pieces of ice armor that will drastically reduce your fire damage intake. Oh, and these faces? Yeah, you can kill these things. Avoiding tricks and traps, you will come across a strange series of rooms that paints this game in a different light all of a sudden, with a bit of high-tech BioWare gestating the nearby demonic opponents. Taking this item will disable the process, from which all I know does dick all, but it sure looks cool. Past that, an ominous door opens up to a series of arenas featuring a statue of the boss within. Beat all of these plodding enemies, and it's off to the gladiator arena against this jackass. Return him to the earth, and then it's up to you to decide which cube to enter, for we are to enter the teleporter cube maze. Mangelar said it best, but I'll say it with much less grace and esteem: fuck this place. That said, I got incredibly lucky on my pathfinding to the final boss, guessing nearly every single warp right on the first try. GG easy. An incredibly unfair and shitty boss fight await those that are not aware of how to properly defeat this asshole. As I tried to tank his health with my massive stockpile of goods, he answers with his dickhead missile pods that absolutely decimate me. I thought those things respawn, but on further investigation are not only killable with a couple of bow shots, you can even target them before starting the boss encounter for free, making the actual fight so much easier. Also, since the initial fight broke me on a level that I cannot even attempt to convey here, I finally caved in and consulted a walkthrough on advice with this guy, and learned of a very interesting oversight in the game. In the vanilla experience, once you defeat this boss, you cutscene walk up to the Moonlight Sword and are declared victorious. But if you run around this boss in a specific manner, you can grab the sword in hand, equip it, die, and respawn at Cease Fountain with the most OP weapon in the game. It's crazy, as even taking it to the crazy lady will allow her to account for the weapon's presence, suggesting that this weapon may have been more relevant in an earlier development build of the game. but was decided to be an end-all be-all in its final inception. Regardless of how you defeat this boss, the final cutscene plays out being far, far happier than the majority of FromSoft's library. You keep waiting for something terrible to happen in these cutscenes. Kingsfield was essentially, practically for all intents and purposes, literally partially the first of a dynasty of the Souls series. In an area where there are no blueprints of what a gamer expected out of their rental or purchase, this game still defied expectations by plunging the player into an unforgiving environment and designing a world in which you learn through observation and trial and error, but far less cheap deaths than a lot of games of that era, with the exception of this particular minecart. For that, all I know is impossible to traverse without instant death from this dick knob that has god-tier aim. Having a background in Souls games gives a player a sense of caution when entering any new area or seeing a new enemy for the first time. But back then, this was not a genre. Publications would call this an action RPG, which would be so far below most definitions in my book, but back then, who knew better? One unfortunate feature of the game back then was the requirement of using a memory card to save your game, omitting any kind of password system or checkpoint if you die. At this point, poor-ass people such as myself may not necessarily have one of those little fuckers on hand, as a ton of the early PSX games made a liberal use of the face buttons for a password system. To be fair, using that system to track your progress would look something like X, 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 triangle, square, square, triangle, square, triangle, square, X, circle, triangle, circle, triangle, circle, triangle, circle, triangle, X, triangle, circle, circle, X. You know, if I were Seth MacFarlane, I would run this gag for the next 5 full minutes, showing both characters staring into each other without any frames animated outside of their mouths. So funny and efficient. Games like this were essentially unplayable when they required a memory card, and since it's not realistic to expect to play for the required 10 to 20 hours without fucking up, which reminds me, it's time for Wild Tangent. Since I'll never have a chance to tell this one-off story, I just remember the time I played the PS2 game Red Faction, a thoroughly mediocre first-person shooter game. I rented both the console and the game from the old store, hoping to kill an afternoon, and managed to do so despite not having a memory card. I realized very early on that I was utterly fucked. There was no checkpoint in this game, and no way to save my progress. This linear adventure started off in the mines, and after a breakout, it was time to fight back. I managed to stay alive, firefight after firefight, sometimes with only a fraction of health and consumables remaining. After about 4 or 5 hours of playing, I finally fucked up when trying to fall through rotating fans, and there I was back at the beginning. It made the game a whole new experience, as I approached the game with a level of caution that was never obtainable otherwise. I attempted to make a game in BASIC, you know, the ancient programming language from the 80s, using goto and if commands that would erase itself if you failed it, meaning you could only play the game once. If anyone figures out how to make a game like that and knows how to market it, let me know and we'll collaborate. Well, that said, it sucks balls not being able to save your progress. Where am I? Who am I? There is a common comparison of Kingsfield and Dark Souls due to the interconnectedness of the maps, which is both games' best feature for sure, but what makes both games so near and dear to me is the sense of awe that both games provide, especially Dark Souls. Dark Souls 1 and 2 being one of my favorite games of all time, and purely for the sense that they brought mystery, lore, atmosphere. I have a lot of words that could try to explain what it's like just listening to that bonfire and reflecting on things. Not just in the game itself, but in life in general. When I sit up from here, should I head back and look that way, or press onward? Or just hang out with my son bro for a little bit longer? Kingsfield does not have this level of majestic level of thought put into it, but it's undeniable that it's the grandfather of this level of adventure. What I disagree with a lot of fans of Souls games is what makes Dark Souls itself so great. As with each iteration of these games, they seem to get harder and sweatier, with games like Sekiro and Bloodborne demanding memorization of each and every boss and their spastic movesets. To me, this is never that interesting to me, and with each attempt at the genre, manages to piss me off more and more, culminating with my walking away from Black Myth Wukong, with its incredible visuals and cool storyline. I find myself incredibly frustrated with the fact that, like all of these games, they find a means to make some of the battles so ball-breakingly hard until they aren't, by playing for the 12th fucking time, mastering when to dodge this tiger's goddamn last swing. I think it's just me getting older, but I'm just tired of this shit. Let me learn this fight, but stop making me have to replay over and over with each battle. With this boss in particular, punishing me heavily for not memorizing his moveset, I just said, I'm done. I'm not saying make it easy, but God of War and Ragnarok were challenging without making me have to refight each boss a dozen times, making the experience for me so much more memorable than, hey, I finally dodged the tiger's last swing enough times to proceed. In my opinion, this boss could have been one of the greatest ever because he's just awesome, but I fucking hate him. I finally got good, and now I get to move on to the next boss to do it all over again. It's tiresome, and I really hope this genre evolves at some point here, because even Elden Ring suffered from this at times. The good news is that Kingsfield has none of that. Instead, it has non-functioning AI waddling in random directions, barely acting as a boss whatsoever, sans the final encounter, and a really irritating boss near said encounter. Everything needs to evolve from suffering, and this game is the evolutionary equivalent of, let's see. Well, if Dark Souls is, say, Homo erectus, Kingsfield is definitely around the Dickensania. That's a real thing. Dickensania. You know what that reminds me of? That reminds me of Dicken's brand apple cider from You Don't Know Jack on PS1. My girlfriend loves to wake up in the morning and heat up a Dickens brand apple cider for a nice hot Dickens cider, or a little vodka in for a nice tasty hard Dickens cider. Okay, that's enough attempts to autoflag the cyber police. I have a $2 per video ad revenue to collect eventually. Speaking of holy shit, where the hell was I? The game has several maps and is set up interestingly. You acquire these in various ways, but is designed in the interest of each party, such as the treasure map for the pirates trying to raid the island of Booty. That map is fully filled out for the areas covered, but lacks detail for what it's not interested in. Venture too far into the island, and that map becomes far less useful. By the end, I acquired the Necrons map, which basically covers the entire game, which helped me to re-navigate some of the more obscure areas. And yes, I know I bragged about not getting lost, but this game is impressively non-linear in its layout, and it's damn tough to move about by memory alone for the majority of the game. I wouldn't be any kind of YouTuber if I didn't shower you in hypocrisy. How else could I get people to engage with me? A top 10 list with listing designed to infuriate the people watching? That's a good idea. Jontrod did that way back in the day by saying GoldenEye was one of the most overrated games of all time because of nostalgia goggles. I'm not mad about that. It's fucking genius. Say something objectively incorrect to incite gamer rage and get those people throwing fists in the comments section. Alternatively, if you incite rage by being a racist fuck stain for over an hour straight, don't apologize. Just go offline for a full year and come back and pretend nothing happened. Separating that artist from the artist way apart, dude. No one actually cares about your opinions in real life. This is video games. Kingsfield may not be one of my favorite games of that era, but it was one of my favorite experiences as a young gamer. It had such an impression of what was possible with this new technology, basically making anything possible at this point. Well, it's silly to look at now. It's the bones of what we are still trying to accomplish with, say, Elden Ring, where you can look into the vastness of the horizon and realize you really can go there. We are still a ways off, but I really hope there will be a time where this kind of exploration becomes all but limitless. The prospects of No Man's Sky mixed with actual designed gameplay loops that make exploring not feel like random generating dungeons each and every time. I certainly don't know how to make it. That's your job, game developers. And when it's done, I'm sure it'll fail for being too unique. Thanks for watching. Thanks for subscribing. You holy shit, there's a lot of people to read out this week. Woo! Gareth Meany, Meme Galore, Aztec Death Whistle, Ziggy 22, Zeromus Ura, Mooney Livy, The Piano Gamer, quote, The Piano _ Gamer, Jarvis Chen, Kurt Clark, Lion's Fire, 99 Potions, Third Eye Saw Destruction, Decades Decay, Aquatic Solstice, Old School, Sword Beats, Records Unofficial, Brandon Cruz, my account's on here? Bobby Smith, Jim Profit, Gotara, Vitor or Vitor, BB, One Jazz, Jillian Wizinski, sorry I can't do those kinds of names, I suck at them, Gordulin, Chowsk 34, Son of Neo, Schweinweigel, Ryan Newland, Martinol Noblaster, Grey Card 668, Skelvin Knight, Tizanski Tudishivler. Like there's no fucking way I can pronounce that. Call Me Scoobs, Andy S, Nick Minchillo, Day Saver Productions, Edgar Dedank, Aaron Phelps, Uncle Gav, Adam Rivera, Fred Dunded, Iceman 2179, Duke Fam, Michael Kappa, Michael Morrissey, Diogo C, Il Blanco, Arzma X, Dragon of Fire, Megadeth 859. That Russian-y looking name right there. Noah Banks, Chuck Woody, Fess Cloud, Chaos 1823, Toby McIntyre, Jay Miller, Willie ML4, Jotaku X, Mr. A, Ordinary Average Guy, not suspect at all, White Corn, Contra Peso 7, Scarabast, Lucia Lemsian, best I can do, David Rubox, Jen, Sneaky Skunk, Profile Morbid 83, Manwich Smile, or Manwich Mile. These names, dude. Howl and Sarah, the shape-shifting cyber spider tigress. Sean Bitts, Shadowless, Atheist Sam Golardo, Jason Edgen, David Cleveland, Alex Martin, Kai Seshe, Mel MK, Sean Hoke, Nameless Hero 211, Quentin Noble, Kristen Kivnetti, TH3WR417H, just kidding, The Wraith, Kara Isley, The Cat is Out of the Box, and Dominic Glazer for your public subscribers. And of course, we have my Patreons. South Boogie Bio, it's Joe's fault! Hiroshima, Porygon for the win, and Serval K. Thanks for voting on the upcoming project, and I'm sorry that I made a video that was on the list and nobody voted for. Go fuck yourselves. Just kidding. I'm sorry. It's been a rough month, but the next video will be based off of the Patreons that have voted, but yeah, stay tuned.
Yo, dog. I heard on the Daily Buzz, it's not cool for a dad to try and talk, your lingo. And I think that's just totally wrong. So, I thought I'd send you this vid, And that's why I'm teabagging noobs for Father's Day. Oh yeah, quick scoped. Let's do this.
That's a turbo kill.
What do you think you're doing, noob? Teabag. Got that, noob? Teabag. I'm gonna teabag you.
That should cool him off.
E-bag. E-bag.
Transferring control to pilot. Warning, high damage sustained. Warning, threat level high.
Seriously, the best part about Father's Day is having two of the best sons in the world and a beautiful daughter-in-law named Yaz. So, I'm having a great Father's Day. Thank you. E-bag.
No Southern Comfort was actually drank during this video. It was actually coffee.
Wow, to get a real tattoo must hurt. Oh yeah, we call that teabag. Got that, noob? Teabag.